Wow, this is like such a wonderful, hopeful episode with Professor Raphael. And I feel like we scraped the surface of so much, but with depth, like you see the full iceberg, you know?
Yeah. He is someone who has 40 years of education experience, has written over 300 articles. The depth that was available in this conversation was amazing. And it was easy as a host. You just had to ask like one question and then like you get all this wealth of information. What I noticed was someone who's been exposed to so much struggle and strife in the various places he's lived in his life has so much heart and so much hope for humanity. It's inspiring at a deep level, and it's also a little bit challenging. So dive in, listen, and definitely comment, ask questions. He alluded to us having him back later on, so look forward to that. Yeah, any other thoughts, Greg?
Be hopeful, support Blast, Compton Cowboys, subscribe, pin us.
And read.
Sis, hallo?
Stuur zeker wegen them.
Jooi iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
Welcome to another episode of Moped Outlaws. Today we're joined by a guest whose resume is so vast and fascinating it practically needs its own index. I'm thrilled to welcome Professor Rafael Cohen-Almagor. He's an Oxford-educated political theorist, the president of the Association of Israel Studies, and an acclaimed author who has tackled everything from the ethics of end-of-life care and the dark side of the internet to the very boundaries of democracy and tolerance. But he's not just a brilliant academic mind, he's also a published poet. Welcome.
Thank you.
He's also a father and a husband.
Yes, many things, I'm sure, as we will find.
And a grandfather, too.
Where are you currently located in the world, Raphael, right now?
Beverly, England, United Kingdom.
Got it. So it's late afternoon there. It's morning here in California where we are.
Right.
I'm going to start off, Greg, if you don't mind, with a question. As someone who's been teaching political theory, communication, and law for decades, what is one positive, hopeful trend you are noticing in the younger generation of students today compared to when you first started out?
Well, they are different. They are certainly different than the student I had 30 years ago. And I went to the heads of my university 15 years ago and I said, listen, we do at university what people did at university 500 years ago. It doesn't work anymore. This needs to be changed. I mean, 500 years ago, students were examined by exams and writing papers. And guess what? We still do the same thing. And it worked until 20 years ago, I think. It doesn't work now. I don't think it does. So I came with a proposal to change, not to eliminate, because I'm not revolutionary, I'm evolutionary. I don't like any kind of extremes. I'm a moderate sort of a guy. But I said, instead of adhering only to these two methods that we know for hundreds of years, let's mix it up. Because the younger generation today is very interested in technology, is far more astute than me in technology, in computers, games, videos, God knows, all the tricks all the bells that move around. Why don't we allow them this creativity? So instead of insisting only on exams and writing papers, let's allow them to prepare a video if they want, or make a game if they want, or do a theater show if they want. Be more creative. But at least in my university, there's what you call quality and equality officer. And they didn't know how to standardize this. And they didn't know how to compare all these things. And it fell apart because the heads of the university didn't want to mess around with this. I think that this hurdle can be overcome. You just have to be more creative. But if you just want to go like this, then you go like this and you don't see what's behind you, around you. You just go straight. So I think this is what's different in students today. They're far more creative. They don't like reading. So it's a struggle actually to make them read. At least in my university, it was a struggle to make them read. And if you have to do a tutorial upon the assumption that they are reading and almost nobody reads, that's a struggle.
So do you think there's avenues, like you mentioned, performance? Are there avenues of education available to the students of today?
Oh, absolutely. I said, I think that we need to mix it up and to be open to all kind of methods in which students can show their brilliance. It doesn't have to be through writing and answering questions under pressure. It can be done, as far as I'm concerned, in the home, when they prepare a video game or when they prepare a clip or when they engage with the friends in some sort of a dialogue and prepare a theater show or anything that shows their creativity. I think that we need to be open to all these things. And I think that some universities are open and some programs are open. I presume that when you go to programs in film and theater and communication, you probably see more of these sort of exams. But insisting on something that does not work, especially now that we are in the age of AI, and God knows who writes what. And I always said to my students and also to my superiors, I'm not a detective. I don't want to be a detective. Don't put me in this place. But now everyone has to be a detective of some sort, and these disciplinary committees are working extra time. And I think this is insane. So I don't think that we should pursue this as we did before, and we have to change. We need to accommodate. We have to be more open to the students to enable them to show their creativity and not to insist on something that it's becoming passé. It's a fact that students don't enjoy reading like students who have been my students 20 or 30 years ago. That's a simple fact. They rather do other stuff. I have also students. This is something also that is different, but it's not so positive. And it's a combination of two factors. About 10 years ago, I came to notice the great number or the increased number of students who have problems, mental problems. And this is not, in the first, I think, 15 years of my teaching. I started teaching in 1985, so I've been around for a long time. But until, I think, 2009, 2010, I don't think that I have maybe one student or that I know that I became aware that suffered from some sort of mental problem. But now there are many, many issues. I had students who fear coming to class. What do you do with this? When there's participation, it's supposed to be compulsory, but they can be great students. One student told me, it was sort of funny. It was sad and funny at the same time. because I deleted him from my log. I mean, I didn't see him. He never showed up. So I just deleted him from my log. And then about 3 weeks before the end of the semester, he writes to me and said, I would like to see you. Wow. I realized he does exist, this guy. So we arranged a meeting. He came to my office. And I told him, I'm listening. It's great to see you. The only question is why I did not see you until now. And then he admitted that he has this fear of being in a class with other people. And he came to see me only because he made a mistake. And he just realized that one of the issues that I insist upon is to have presentation in class. He was not aware of this when he registered to my course. He didn't see it. And suddenly realized 20% is participation, that you come and actually have to present in class something. He said, if I knew this, if I pay attention closely, and I knew that, I would not come to your class. I would not register. And I said, okay, this is a third-year student. I said, so how many, I said, I didn't know if this is personal or not personal. I said, how many classes actually you attended? And I said, none. This is the first time that I'm coming to a class in university. In almost 3 years, 2.5 years, he never showed up to a single class. I said, how are your grades showing up? He said, fine, I'm 2.1, 2.2, which is, like second grade in England. Unbelievable. So we arranged that he would come and do the presentation in my office, just to me. And it was not great, but he did pass the class. Anyway, I never had such things in the first 20 years of my life. And I increasingly witnessed this in the past 15 years.
So the hypothesis that I have about the phenomena you're describing is that it's directly related to cell phone use and the advent of social media. Do you think that there's merit to that hypothesis based on your observations?
I think that truer to this phenomena is the fact that people now are more aware of mental problems. And universities are more open to acknowledge the problem and to provide an array of help and support for students. This thing did not exist 20 years ago. Nowadays, a special office that assists the students because of all this, because there is awareness on part of the students. And some of the students don't have any problems, I guess. It's just a hypothesis. But they just want to ride a horse. They can get something out of it. They can get more time, for instance. They can get some allowances. And they just ride the tiger. And they exploit the system. And the system doesn't want to mess around with these things. Again, they are not detectives. So if you provide a note from the doctor, a GP in England, general practitioner, and some GPs can be easily influenced to write such notes, then so be it.
It does support your thoughts about education needs to change. It needs to adapt to what's happening these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
In what ways have you leveraged media or alternative methods of teaching that are synergistic to what you suggest the students should be able to do? Have your teaching methods changed in terms of the way you deliver lectures or the way that you assign subjects?
I have to follow the paradigm that is existing in my university. I cannot be a lone sort of writer. So although I wanted to integrate all kind of other modes, it was impossible for me. I myself, I think that a great teacher is a teacher who accommodates himself or herself to the audience. I think this is a great teacher. So a great teacher is someone who is able to teach 2 years old and 82 years old. I suspect that my ability to engage with 2 years old is rather limited. My wife can do that, no problem. This is my limitation. But from the age of, I don't know, 14, 15 until 82, I'm able to teach anybody. And I'm a performer. So if I stand in a class of 100 people or 400 people, for me it's a theater. I'm a showman. And if I teach 10 people in a seminar, then I teach very, very differently. I'm far more attentive. There's more dialogue, allow more participation and so on. It's totally different for me. But when I'm on stage and I perform to 100 people, I do all kind of stuff. I tell story, I jump, I become theater sort of a guy. I enjoy it. It's a role play, you come into the role. I have a dialogue between myself. I'm John Stuart Mill and discussing things with Berg, and sometimes I'm John Stuart Mill, sometimes Berg. I hope I'm not confusing the students. And if I do, this is their problem or my problem, I don't know. But anyway, it's fun. So yes, I accommodate myself to my audience, and it's something that I enjoy. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy research. I also enjoy administration. I'm sort of a round sort of guy in academia. I don't think all my colleagues can do all three of them well. I think that I can do. I'm not bragging now. I'm too old to brag now. It's simply a fact. I've done all three of these things quite successfully.
Is there a particular experience that you've had since you've been, teaching from everywhere from Jerusalem and Haifa to Oxford and UCLA to Sweden that, really gave you some kind of hope for the future? Is there a particular experience?
Yes. People ask me, what do you think is going to happen to this world? Some of my colleagues and friends are worried. Because the young generation don't read on the whole, or don't read much. They are constantly on their phone or on their computer. They play games all the time. Some have a very short span of attention. One of my students, we had a dialogue in class, so it happened. I didn't intend to go that way. But then I discovered that my students during this dialogue that he doesn't go to the movies. He doesn't go to the cinema. And I was puzzled. I asked, why? Why don't you go to the cinema? He said, why should I? First of all, it's long, 1 hour and a half. I'm not sitting 1 hour and a half in one place. Secondly, it costs money. Thirdly, it requires some arrangements because I don't like to go alone, so I have to find someone to do that, and it's extra burden for me. I have to drive or take a bus or taxi to that place. It's costly. Why don't I just sit in the preview of my living room, open the computer, watch whatever I want. If I want to stop, I stop. And then the following day I continue. It's my leisure, it's my time. It's all in pluses. Now, I did not hear these things 20 years ago. Never. I mean, it's a different generation. Yeah. So people are worried. And I tell them as a political scientist, listen, to make a country function, you don't need that many people. Okay, that's the truth of the matter. This universe is operated by 1% of the population. We will find 1% of the population that is good. So please don't worry, it's fine.
So my question was there an experience you had that with a student or in the teaching environment that gave you a sense of optimism?
Yes, that's the optimism. There'll always be people who make the world go round. That's always. Yeah, don't worry. It will be fine.
Don't worry. Okay, thank you. I understand better now. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
If you don't mind, I would like to go into this realm of social political understanding. And in one of the interviews I listened to, you said for there to be peace in the Middle East, especially with Palestine and Israel, it needs a strong third party country to help champion that peace. And you mentioned the United States seemed to be the most likely, given the current, well, at the time of the interview, which I think was about a year ago, you thought the United States was the appropriate country. And I'm wondering, given our current state with our current leader, is that still a practical assumption? Is the United States now, as we're speaking, the right country to champion peace?
I did not speak about now. I don't think that there will be peace between Israel and Palestine soon. For the past 13 years, I've been researching and writing a book called Resolving the Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. Peace is the most important value in my life after my health and my family. I've been committed to peace since the 1980s and remain committed to peace. I was a peacenik activist before I became an academic. So the research that I've been conducting showed that it's very difficult for Israel and for the Palestinians to reach an agreement. Very, very difficult. They tried and they failed several times. And I think that they can do it. I mean, there are two scenarios. One, that they can do it themselves. And then for the last stage of the implementation of the peace accord, you need the United States. You need the United States because of its might, because of its abilities. It's a very powerful nation. It's the most powerful nation on this planet. And it has the money, it has the connections, it has the capacity to implement and to help support Israel and Palestine to go through the hurdles and overcome them. And secondly, the United States is the only country in the world at present that has leverage over both parties. It's the only country in the world that has leverage over Israel. I mean, there are certainly more powerful countries in the world than Israel, China and Russia and so on. But Israel is not very tempted to listen to them. And at least until now, China and Russia don't push the envelope to the extent of trying to force Israel to do something Israel doesn't like. So this is why I'm saying that the United States is the only candidate. It needed for, at least for the last stage. Maybe it also can be beneficial for the United States also to be engaged before that, before the last stage. We know that the United States failed. The most crucial failure with horrendous consequences was Camp David 2000. That should not come about. It was a mistake to convene Camp David at that time. But perhaps in other circumstances, mediation through the United States can be advisable or can be beneficial to both Israel and Palestine. There's a great amount of suspicion and mistrust between the two parties. They don't sit comfortably together, many of the leaders of both parties. There's a strong disbelief between them. There's a lack of trust, lots of suspicions, and some conspiracy theories that I heard in both sides. So it is difficult for them to agree. So maybe even before that. But, you know, there was a time during the 1990s when Israelis spoke directly to Palestinians without the United States, and it was successful. And I'm talking about Oslo, the Oslo process between 1992 until 1995, when it started to fail after assassination of Yitzhak Rabin on the 4th of November. But this accord was signed without the involvement of the United States. The United States hardly knew about what's going on there in Oslo, and it came about. So it's possible if there is trust between the two parties, as there was between the two delegations between Israel and Palestine at the time, maybe we don't need United States. But I think certainly for the implementation stage, United States is needed. Notwithstanding who is in power in the United States, whether his name is Trump or another name, that doesn't really matter. But anyway, peace is something that we should be hopeful, because I think that enough blood was shed, and I want children in Palestine and Israel to behave like children, not to be locked behind doors now as we speak, when rockets are flying, missiles are flying all over the place, but actually to do best what children do, which is to play with each other. And Israeli Palestinian Israeli children hardly meet and hardly play with each other. And for me, it's very, very sad, because they lose their childhood, and the cemeteries are filled quickly, and it's a sad reality. I don't hate anything in life, because I believe that hatred is consuming the targets and consume the person who hates. So I try not to hate. I don't hate, I don't envy. I leave all this negative stuff to other people. I don't need them. But there's one thing that I really, really don't like and I detest, which is war. In my short life or long life, depends how you see that, but I endured 7 wars. How many wars you endured in your life? I hope for you the answer is 0.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the case for the majority of people I know. 7 wars for one's life is far too many. 1 is too many, and 7 is far too many. My heart goes to the Iranians and to the Israelis and to the Palestinians who suffer so much. It's all of this is avoidable.
You've written about speech, media, and ethics. How would you assess the ethical performance of the press right now, both domestically and internationally?
Bad.
Mm.
If you read the book, you know that I have a lot of critique towards the media. I don't like what many medias are doing. And then confronting the internet dark side is about how the internet providers are running the show. I don't like the way that they run the show. I'm a great believer in free speech. I'm a great believer in boundaries to free speech. And I'm a great believer in the fact that free speech has to be balanced against no less important value, which is social responsibility. And many segments of the media act without sense of responsibility. And for me, it's very, very sad.
Do you think that the concentration of ownership, particularly in the United States, of media is a big part of the reason that they're failing so badly?
Yes, it's part of the reason. And by the way, this phenomena happens in many parts of the world. It happens in the United Kingdom, it happens in Germany, it happens in Israel, it happens in Canada. In many countries, Western countries, we've seen that we have a very small fraction of companies that control the entire media. That's why I said before, only 1% of the world actually runs the show in the entire world. I think that the competition is driving them mad. And I think that revenue, money, drive them mad. They're all frantic about money, ratings, and getting more subscribers and more members and more audiences and more revenues, and that drives them mad. And they lose their moral compass as a result of that. I've seen so many things I don't like. In Israel, I was public representative in the Israeli Press Council. So it's in Israel, it's third journalists, third editors and proprietors, and third people who represent public interest. And I was professor at that time in the Department of Communication at the University of Haifa. So I was invited and I served on that platform for 3 years. And I did not like what I've seen, because the editors, proprietors, and journalists have 2/3 of the press council. So that means that if they don't like one of the suggestions of the public figures, they can topple it very, very quickly. So, the press council in Israel and also in other countries, I call it a window dressing and a lighting rod. That's the two functions: window dressing and lighting rod. It is there to show the world that they are responsible, but it's only window dressing because behind the window, the real way that they conduct their affairs, it's nothing to envy. I'll tell you a small story. For 1 year, I taught in the professional school of journalism. And I taught them media ethics. And I noticed that there was a repeated phenomenon that people were laughing during my lectures, but I didn't tell any joke. I mean, I sometimes tell joke. That's fine for them to laugh when I'm actually flattered. But I was serious and they were laughing. So I stopped the class. I said, "Why do you laugh? I want to know, really. It intrigues me because it happens time and again." So they were reluctant to tell me the truth, but I said, "I'm not going to continue teaching. You must tell me what's happening." So there was one guy who was strong enough and believing in himself and got the power to tell me the truth. And he told me, "Listen, we can't take you very seriously, Professor." I said, "Why?" I said, "Because next door from you, we are going to another class. Where one of the editors of the major newspapers in Israel will teach them practice. And he tells them all kind of stuff that for me, I would vomit." He told me, ask him, for instance, give me an example. The example that he gave me is that he taught them to go to cemetery and to look for notes on graves and open the notes. Sometimes envelopes, to open the envelope and read them to see if there's a story to follow. And so he said, if I go your way, I will be an ethical journalist, but probably jobless. Because this guy, who is the editor of Yediot Aharonot, is not going to hire me. And because he would force me, essentially, to do all kinds of unethical stuff. And why is this? Because they look over the shoulders to their competitors. They have to get the story first. And they have strong belief that if they are not going to tell the story because of ethical reasons, then the other guy, their competitor, could not care less about ethics, and they are going to publish the story. So this is going to show in the revenues, and they are going to fail. This is a very common story. And for me, it's really sad. I'm not saying that there are not islands of sanity and responsibility. There are, and there are some very good journalists. There are, but I said too many of them, between social responsibility and getting the story, they would prefer to get the story.
If you were to offer a solution to this problem, either a legislative one or a regulatory one, what do you think the most helpful way that we could shift how we handle the organization of corporations that handle information would be?
For me, law is always the last resort. Always. Sometimes we have to employ it, but it's always last resort. I would like to start from the beginning. So I will start with education. I will start with education at a very young age, from kindergarten, to instill in young kids a sense of ethics, morality, responsibility, values that we all share. And if we'll be able to instill with them these kind of values in a young age and continue doing this, strengthen these values as they progress to primary school, high school, university, if this is a common phenomena all the time, I think we'll be better off. All as society, we all be better off. Unfortunately, some schools do this. Some other schools do this less.
It seems well, here I'm wondering if your experience as a poet is shining a light on potentially where our education could grow by at a young age, as you say, kindergarten and early ages, if the creative and imaginative elements of a human being are emphasized. Do you think that would bring hope to adults being more empathetic and community minded?
I think any way that you can convey this message is good, poetry included. I love poetry. For me, it's the highest form of writing. It's not for everyone because it's creative and it's open to interpretations. And many poets do this in purpose. They are vague in purpose and wants to be open for interpretation. So the same poem can be understood as many, many things by many people. Rod Stewart wrote a love story, a love story, and then it realized it's actually love for his football team that he admitted. But for some time, people thought it's about a certain woman. So, you can love many, many things, and you can show and express love in many, many things. Love to your wife, love to your girlfriend, love to a country, love to your football team, love to a music group. People love all kinds of stuff. And if you the poet that do not admit in that, then it's open to interpretation, and it's absolutely fine. I'm saying it's not for everyone's taste because some people are not that creative, and unfortunately, not people like to think. I mean, some people do like to think, but I think that too many people actually are not very keen to think. They tread the same route that many, many generations before them walked and paved the road for them. And they're quite happy to tread the same road without too much thinking. I'm saying this as a sociologist. I know many, many people who don't appreciate very much thinking. It's okay to go this. Whatever the leader tells me to do, it's okay. I don't have to. I've seen this, unfortunately, too often and in many countries.
When you do write poetry, Rafael, do you have a primary language that you feel facilitates your poetry? English seems so cumbersome to me, and as anyone who's understood Latin influenced languages and things like that there's a bit more lyricalness to some of them. Is there a language that is your primary poetic authorship?
In Europe, I'm considered to be quite ignorant. In the United States, I'm very advanced because in the United States, most people speak only American, which is sort of English, sort of. But in Europe, many of my friends speak 5, 7 languages. I know only 2 languages. So I grew up in Israel, and I grew up talking Hebrew to everyone. I hardly spoke any English to anybody. There was no reason, only in English class. But other than that, I spoke Hebrew. So my first book was in Hebrew. Middle Eastern Shores, published. It's actually my very first book ever, 1993, that's my very first book. And then I published 2006, I published Voyages, also in Hebrew. I came to Oxford in the 1980s. I was in Oxford for 4 years and then came back to Israel. And then I returned to England for the position that I held until recently at the University of Hull as professor in 2007. So since 2007, I'm more in England and I speak more English than Hebrew. I speak Hebrew only to my family. And even to my kids, it's becoming problematic because they spend now more time in England than they were in Israel. So most of the time I speak English. And when you spend so much time in a country, then you start dreaming in English. That's the key that you notice. That the first thing that happens, the dream shift language. which is, when it started to happen, I said, something strange happening here. What's going on? Dreaming in English. And then I found it easier to write in English because I now wrote and edited 20 books. And I don't know how many articles, but I think more than 300. And the vast majority are in English. So I write poetry in English. As we speak, there are 3 books that I've been writing, poetry books. 2 of them in English and 1 of them in Hebrew. And I did not publish them because most publishers in England or in the English world don't know me. I publish poetry in Hebrew, so it's very, very difficult for me to get a publisher in England. Maybe this will be a good venue for me to say that, and maybe the publisher will pop out and say, "Hey, I'm interested in your poetry, send it to me."
We will definitely include your contact information for anyone who's inspired.
Please, if there's a publisher who will listen to me, I'd love to publish my poetry. Poetry is extremely important to me. I try to write at least 1 poem a day. And for me, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to articulate ideas. It's so creative, and the vast majority of it is simply nice. It's not about wars and violence and terrorism and corrupt leaders and corrupt countries and all kind of Michiganer crazy ideas. But it's just nice. Poetry is nice. It's pleasant, and it works your mind, because you think what actually they wanted to say here. Sometimes it's puzzling, but descriptions of nature and colors and horses and animals and people and streets. It's lovely. I love poetry.
As I reflect on my limited poetic authorship as an American folk songwriter, I hear words with a tone. And from my limited experience with cantors in synagogue, there appears to me to be a relationship between Hebrew and tone. Do you hear tone when you write poetry?
I never thought about it, I have to say. But I'm not a professional poet.
Right.
For me, writing a poem can be 5 minutes. It's anywhere between 5 and 20 minutes that I invest in writing a poem. So I have to have the muse, and then I just have to find a way to write it before it goes away. I lost some of my poetry because it was during the night, and I didn't want to completely wake up or not to wake up my wife. So it lost. When I woke up in the morning, I could not remember it anymore. But the majority of the time, it's a muse. It's something that lands on me, and there is a poem. So there can be months when I don't write any poem, and there can be a week in which I write 2 poems. It's really fluctuate. But, with time, they accumulate into books. At one point in my life, in 2006, I was in Bogliasco, which is a research center in a villa in Italy. Beautiful place in the tip of the Italian Riviera. And they have rounds of cohorts that come, and every cohort has between 10 and 20 people, something like that. And I was there for a month. So after 3 weeks, close to my end of the term, I had a new neighbor, a young woman, and I was going out of my room when she entered her room, which was empty. And now she is going to occupy this room. And she came with a huge bag. And I said, "Welcome to Bogliasco. It's a lovely place. I'm sure that you're going to enjoy it. May I ask what you're carrying, this heavy bag? It's really..." And she says, "These are poetry books." I said, "Lovely, I love poetry. Why you carry so many poetry books?" And she says, "Because I'm a poet." okay, you're a poet, so why do you write? I mean, why do you carry all these books with you? So professional poets like her, she's a professional poet. She sits down to her desk and she reads things and she gets inspired and she writes poetry. So she is a professional poet, as I'm a professional scholar. I want to write an article, so I sit down and write an article. She is a poet. She writes, she sits down, she reads, and she does research, and she writes a poem. For me, I never heard such a thing in my life. It's so different from the way that I write poetry. For me, it's like a flick of a moment. It's just there. It's a muse coming up, and then 10 minutes later, it's gone. If I want to write it, there was nothing left. She actually invests in each and every word, in each and every sentence, in each and every line that she writes. There's so much thinking behind this. And she studied that, and she following all kind of methods and patterns and so on. I just write whatever comes to my mind. So I'm not a serious poet like her. For me, it's a hobby.
Is there a poem that you could read to us that's appropriate given the time?
You didn't give me any notice. You should have. Then I would prepare something.
Maybe next one.
No, I can't do that. I'm sorry. I love too many of those.
Understood.
In your experience with poetry, like Rumi is one of my favorite poets. And as an American, my experience of Middle East and especially Arab nations is strictly through news and media. And I get a very stoic vision of what an Arab is. Very masculine, very unemotional. And yet the poets I know from Arab nations and the Middle East are like Rumi and very, very attached to the divine and that infinite, expansive nature of spirit.
That's true.
So I'm wondering if perhaps my viewpoint through media, like, is there truly more hope in the culture of the Middle East for this expansive nature of humanity than what the media is showing me?
Of course. First of all, I think that the Arabs are very emotive, very emotional. I don't find them cold at all. They are very, very, very emotive and very expressive of their emotions. There is always hope. I mean, I don't think I could live without hope. It's impossible. You must have hope because now the reality is very ugly. People die and die in all kinds of ways that are horrible. Always there is hope. I never lose hope. Never. I would not allow myself to do that. You know, people ask me, how do you write about peace in such a reality? I said, I have to write about peace because I want to change reality. That's the way you change. One scratch on the wall is just a scratch, but if you have a million scratch, there's no wall. I want to contribute my scratches to the wall and to eliminate it. And if there will be enough people who believe in that, hopefully there will be leadership that is going to sway the people and there will be peace. But it's not going to be now. It's going to take time because we need to have different leadership and we have to recover from the horrors that Israel and Palestine endured during the past 2 years and beyond the past 2 years.
I'm wondering, from your experience, when I talk to my friends in England, in France, the Philippines, here in the United States, it seems that the fascist mindset is rising in our political realms around the world.
That's true. That's very sad. It's a populism, very, very cheap populism. They touch on open nerves and they find scapegoats and they say it's only because of them. It's never because of us. they need someone to blame, and they want to have a better future, and they promise all kind of rosy promises that have no substance in reality, and they tempt people. It's very, very sad. It's a sad reality. Of the three nations that I know very, very well, because I lived in them for quite a while: the United States, Israel, and the United Kingdom. United Kingdom is still it's the sunniest of the three of these. Labour is in power, so it's a better place for me than the craziness of Israel and the United States.
Do you see anything that's happening with the populace that people are now willing to be swayed into that mindset? Like, I've heard that the difference between those who are billionaires and have a lot of money and those who are struggling for a living that gap is becoming more and more prevalent. Is
That's
that
true.
economic truth, do you think, making it so that the population on a whole is more prime for that fascist mindset?
I think that there are some common denominators between societies, and there's some very major differences. I don't think that the reality in Israel is comparable to the reality in the United Kingdom, is comparable to the reality in the United States. You'll see some factors that are mentioned: populism and scapegoating and promises that have nothing to do with reality, and growing tendency to lie, unfortunately, as a way of life, as a way of politics. That's becoming old, holding to age. And I have to say, it's became more dramatic and more awful during the first Trump presidency. Before Trump, I don't recall that the major media used to use fact checkers. It's a phenomena that, at least to my mind or to my awareness, came with the first presidency of Trump, because he has some issues with the truth, to the extent that he calls his platform truth. He has strong issues with truth. And then other leaders all over the world follow suit, and they follow the principle that if you say the same thing time and time again, it doesn't really matter whether it's true or lie. That's what people are going to remember. And this is something that Trump believes, and we've seen this with leaders in England, unfortunately, and we've seen this many times with leaders in Israel. There's very little connection between what they say and what the truth is. I'm asked to explain reality often, and now people ask me about Iran and the war with Iran and so on. And these people believe that I'm some sort of an expert. I don't have any intelligence. Netanyahu doesn't call to consult me, nor is Trump, unfortunately. To gather information that is reliable is difficult, because everyone lies. I mean, all of them don't tell the truth. No exceptions are made. Everyone doesn't tell the truth. So you have to apply common sense, and you have to apply your knowledge of history and knowledge of, in this respect, the Middle East, and the knowledge of leaders, the knowledge of politics, to read a lot, not only one or two or three medias, but actually more than that, and to get a reflection of different societies. What's the American take? What's the British takes? What the Israeli take? Different medias in each one, and then to apply your common sense and to say what you think, given your experience and knowledge of this situation and past situation. But it's impossible to rely on one media today. Even so-called credible medias I used to think they were credible, like the Washington Post and the New York Times. Now they're storytellers. Oftentimes they have an agenda, and when you have an agenda and you are committed to a story and to a certain agenda, you are going. I'm not saying to lie, certainly necessarily in Times and Post, but not to say everything that you should say, and not to look too hard for the other facets of the truth. John Stuart Mill, one of the greatest philosophers of all times, and certainly one of my heroes, and a champion of free speech, he said that one of the problems of humanity is the belief that they have only a fraction of the truth, but they believe it's the whole truth.
Mm.
Whereas what you need to do, he tells us, what we need to do, people, is to believe that you have a truth, not that truth, but a truth. And you need to put this truth of yours in constant challenge, and to challenge it with other truth. And at the end of the day, it's accumulation. It's a puzzle of truth that you gather, and this is going to give you a more complete truth of the reality. And he demanded a lot from us, because he said, even then, you should not sit comfortably on your roses, but you should then confront that truth, the new truth that you have, that you assembled with different truth. So it's a very Sisyphean way of life. Yeah. You are never complacent. You are never relaxed. You always have to challenge. And I think newspaper today in the world, they are complacent. They are not challenged anymore. They have a story to tell. They have a hammer that they want to hammer us for us to believe. And they don't really go out of the way to be challenged with other truth. This is the reality. So you have to read quite a lot to get a picture of what's going on.
Given, for our listeners who are feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world right now, the polarization, the ongoing wars, all the digital noise, what's one particular way that you think they can practice the kind of just and reasonable multiculturalism that you advocate for?
They need to educate themselves. I told you before that the young generation doesn't like to read. It's a problem. It's really a problem when people refuse to read. It's a problem. I met a young scholar at the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington in 2022. She's a professor at university. She doesn't read. So I said, how do you manage? And she said, I use audiobooks. And she asked me, are you going to publish your book? I'm going to read your book. With all this very passion coffee. I love that. But you publish audiobook. It's not up to me. It's to Cambridge University Press. I don't know what Cambridge is going to do. But, it's a different generation. She's a younger scholar, of course. She's in 30s, I think. At least she looks at the 30s. I never ask a lady for her age, because God forbid. No. But she looks in the 30s, maybe early 40s. Anyway, you have now scholars who don't read. You have to be educated. Your reality is not the reality of a pub. In England, people go to the pubs. In the pub, you can say whatever you think without thinking. Just whatever comes to your mouth, you say. In class, I want my student to say, I tell them, this is informed conversation. You're not in a pub. You're not just a free rider comes to me with your ideas. With all due respect to your ideas, I'm not interested in them. I'm interested in your ideas that have to be relying on something, on facts, on studies, on the readings that I give you to read. We have to have some sort of engagement. If people refuse to read, and if they are hooked by populism and all kinds of promises that the leaders are telling them, it's a real problem. The only advice is to be educated, to don't believe. John Stuart Mill said, try to refute even Isaac Newton. you can't be harmed by this. Even the commentarism that you feel is right, I don't know, Einstein, quantum theory, Newton, black holes, the world was evolved, anything that you have in mind that you think it's fixed, we know the answer, challenge. As John Stuart Mill told us, it's a plus because what two things can happen. One is that you're going to affirm and reaffirm what you thought of. So this is good, that's a plus. Or you are going to see that you're wrong. And that's also a plus because who likes to live in a lie? So challenge is nice, it's good for you. Don't be afraid to challenge. You know, when people ask me in class, what is your opinion? I said, my opinion is not relevant here. I'm not your guru. I'm not your rabbi. You have to challenge me, not to follow me. I'm not interested in that. And even if you would like me to, if you really want to know what I think, you can read my stuff. You know, I publish quite a lot. Go and read my stuff. It's okay, you know. But I'm not going to tell you what you think. My views are as, acceptable as your views. There's no hierarchy here. The fact that the teacher doesn't mean that I'm right and you are wrong. It just means that I have more knowledge than you at this point. But even with all my knowledge, I might be wrong. And I'll be more than happy to recognize that I'm wrong. If you show me that I'm wrong, that's fine. I'm going to change my views. By the way, I did change my views on some, if not everything. But on some issues, I changed at least twice that I can remember now. You know, one was about euthanasia. I was a supporter of euthanasia. But then I visited Netherlands and I went into a cognitive dissonance. And after 6 months, I changed my views. And today I'm vehemently against euthanasia. I support physician suicide, but I'm very much against euthanasia because I saw so much abuse and I can't support abuse. And I also changed my mind about female circumcision. I thought that I would be against any form of female circumcision. And then I saw in Israel there was a very lenient form of female circumcision that is even more lenient than male circumcision. I said, if I support male circumcision, I should support that. So I changed my mind at least twice and I explain these things. In my books, in my articles, I explain what happened and why I changed my mind, just to tell you that I'm willing to change my mind if I see reality that I'm not comfortable with. There's nothing wrong with that.
What great insight. If someone as knowledgeable and learned as you can find their way to shifting their views, then there's hope for all of us to address our own biases and our own lack of insights. That's inspiring. At this point in time, we've kind of come to the end of the conversation. Greg and I have a question that we asked all of our guests. For us, it's a tradition and a joy. It provides humor and surprise and insight into folks. And it's kind of a hard question. So, Greg, if you would, please.
And before I ask, is there anything, Rafael, that you would like to touch upon or bring up that hasn't been spoken?
I just want to emphasize to your audience, don't lose hope and believe in peace. Resist any form of hatred, racism, resist wars. We can do better. We as humanity can do better. And it's always better to negotiate, to listen, to speak, to hear. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a very good reason, meaning that we have to listen twice as much as we speak and move a way forward in a way that is accommodating, that is tolerant, that is peaceful, that will bring tranquility to the world. Believe in that, and you do your share with your friends and your family, with your community, and everyone does his or her share. We are going to lead to a better world. Believe in that. There's no need for violence and for hatred and for racism and for negativity. Always remain hopeful that we can do better, because the reality is that over generations, for the thousands of years that passed, we've done better. So the future, I believe, is going to be better.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's very uplifting and beautiful. Thank you. All right. So our traditional final question is Eminem or Foo Fighters?
Eminem and what?
Or Foo Fighters.
What is this? What is food fight?
These are two different musicians in America. Marshall Mathers, known as Eminem, who's from Detroit and is a
I know
typical-
that. I know him. Yeah.
And then Foo Fighters, which is a rock band by David Grohl.
Never heard of them.
He was the drummer for Nirvana. And then
Okay.
and when Kurt Cobain took his life or left, he started this band about a year and a half or 2 years after.
Neither. That's not my take. People come to my mind as great singers are people like Barbra Streisand and Whitney Houston and Celine Dion and Billy Joel and Sting and Phil Collins. This is me. Very different from these guys. I'm sorry. I don't listen to them.
That's perfect.
All right. Well, Professor Rafael, your work is powerful. And while democracy, tolerance, and peace require incredibly hard work and careful boundaries, they're always worth fighting for. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your profound wisdom with today. And for our listeners, you can find the links to his latest books and the incredible body of work in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.